your Republican colleagues or your allies who are concerned about your close relationship with Laura Loomer?
Well, I don't know what they would say. Laura's been a supporter of mine, just like a lot of people are supporters, and she's been a supporter of mine. She speaks very positively of the campaign. I'm not sure why you asked that question, but Laura is a supporter. I don't control Laura. Laura has to say what she wants. She's a free spirit. Well, I don't know. I mean, look, I can't tell Laura what to do. Laura's a supporter. I have a lot of supporters, so I don't know what exactly you're referring to. That's okay. Yeah, please. I just don't know. Laura's a supporter. I don't know. She is a strong person. She's got strong opinions, and I don't know what she said, but that's not up to me. She's a supporter. Please.
Traveling with you on your plane.
Okay, a lot of people do. It's a very big plane.
With you. She made racist remarks about your opponent. She also espoused conspiracy theories about 9/11. Do you disavow those remarks?
Well, I have to see what the remarks are. You're telling me for the first time we're here discussing the destruction of San Francisco and California by a person that's running for president. So I don't even know what you're talking about. I do know that she may have said something based on what you're telling me, but I don't know what she said. But I'll go take a look, and I'll put out a statement later on, but I really don't know. Please.
President, Springfield, Ohio is experiencing a migrant crisis. Will you
Yes.
use an event there to show the media what's actually happening, maybe a town hall?
Well, we could, and maybe we'll do that. Where are you from? That's good. Very good. They're doing a very good job. Yeah, that's very good. No, I will, maybe Springfield, maybe Aurora, maybe both. We'll go there. I can say this. We will do large deportations from Springfield, Ohio. Large deportations. We're going to get these people out. We're bringing them back to Venezuela. You know, he told Biden he's not accepting anybody back. They moved all their criminals, not all of them, but the rest are moving in now. They emptied their jails in Venezuela, emptied their criminals, emptied the nests. They call them nests of bad people. They're all now in the United States, and they're now taking over cities. It's like an invasion from within. And we're going to have the largest deportation in the history of our country, and we're going to start with Springfield and Aurora, okay?
The mayor of Springfield, Ohio, the police chief, the Republican governor of Ohio have all debunked this story about people eating pets. And now there are bomb threats at schools and kids being evacuated. Why do you still spread this false story?
The real threat is what's happening at our border, because you have thousands of people being killed by illegal migrants coming in and also dying. You have women dying as they come up. They're coming up in large groups. We call it a caravan. I think I came up with that name, but it's really what it is. 10,000, 15,000, 20,000 people. And you have large numbers of women being killed in those caravans coming up to this country. And then when they get here, they can go into the country and they end up being sex slaves and everything else. Those are your real problems, not the problem that you're talking about. Yeah, okay.
Question. So you just said that you'll carry out the largest mass deportation of illegal immigrants. How are you going to have, for example, Governor Gavin Newsom or officials in sanctuary cities comply with that?
Well, you know, if you go to the people of California, they don't want to have sanctuary cities anymore. They're tired of sanctuary cities. Sanctuary cities are really blocks that protect bad people from deportation and other problems. And they're going to do it. And our federal government has tremendous power. But we're not going to let states, even like California, even though I know it's largely a sanctuary state, essentially, but we're not going to let that happen to the people of California. They want these people out. They're just as scared as everybody else. The people of Ohio are scared. The people of Colorado, you have a governor there who's very weak. He doesn't know what to do. And he doesn't want to talk about it. A lot of it, as per your question, they don't want to talk about what's happening. They say it's so bad for the city. Let's not go public. Let's live with it for a little while. Maybe it'll go away. It's not going to go away. It's going to get worse. It's going to get so bad. You know what we're experiencing now is they're just getting settled in. There's 21 million people that have come in. They're just getting settled in. It's going to get much worse. It's going to get worse at a level like nobody's ever seen before. Go ahead.
Follow-up question regarding the economy. We're seeing more and more companies are shipping their jobs overseas, but even for white-collar jobs,
right.
they're having problems with that. We've been seeing mass layoffs. How would you prevent these white-collar jobs from being
by lowering taxes and regulations. And what they're doing is they're seeing that every time it looks like Kamala's doing well, companies want to leave. Stock markets go down. The stock market, there's a great gentleman, Scott Bessent, who is one of the top Wall Street people. He said the market's only up because they all think that Trump is going to get elected. We had a great stock market. Even with COVID, we ended up handing over a market that was higher than previous to COVID or the China virus coming in. No, we are going to make sure that the taxes are going to stay where they are and or come down, ideally come down, both for the middle class and for corporations, because corporations put the people to work. We had the best numbers in the history of our country, by far, not even close. And there are companies leaving because they cannot stand what's happening right now to our country. And one of the reasons I'm doing this today is to let them know you're not going to have to leave because we're going to take care of the problem. They have a tremendous crime problem. Like if you're in Los Angeles, look at the crime numbers. And then you have the FBI lying about the numbers, saying the numbers went down. But anybody with common sense know the numbers are through the roof. I didn't know they were as high as they are. But think of it. How good is a person from a government agency that would release the numbers when they saw that I was unfairly targeted by ABC, and you could say by the FBI with false numbers? So, I mean, I have great respect. I have to find out who that person is or who that group is, but I have great respect. Go ahead, one more. You okay?
North Korea, Kim Jong-un, he just toured a uranium facility. The U.S. is saying that Iran is sending ballistic missiles to Russia. How, if reelected, how would you address the situation with our adversaries?
I'll be able to make phone calls and solve most of the problems. I may actually have to meet a couple of times. But, you know, Viktor Orban, and you've heard me say this, but it wasn't long ago, he said the only way you're going to solve the world problem is Trump has to be president again. And I don't say it. I didn't say it. I sort of would be embarrassed to say it. But he said everybody was afraid of Trump. He said China was afraid. Russia was afraid. North Korea was afraid. Everybody was afraid. We had no wars. We defeated ISIS in 4 weeks. And they said it was going to take 5 years, right? The generals in Washington. I went there and met a great general and some great people. And I said, go to it. And he took them out in 4 weeks, 100% of the ISIS caliphate. I flew there. I flew to Iraq, to the field, and they took them out in a very short period of time, short order. We have a great military, but, you know, a great military needs a leader. If you don't have leaders, then you end up with Afghanistan, the worst withdrawal from a country in the history. Look, I've gotten to know great people. I went to Arlington at their request. And I stood, and I was with them for hours, and I stood with them. They did a ceremony, and then they asked me if I'd go down to the graves of their children. They called them their children, that they always will be their children. And there were tears all over, as there should be. And they said, sir, could you take pictures with me by the grave of my son, in one case, a daughter? And I said, I'd love to. And I took pictures with them for a while, and then I left, and that was it. And I got home, and I got a call from the people in the campaign. Sir, the Biden people are saying that you did this for publicity. If people knew how hard it was to get there, because I was coming from a location that was very far away, and yet they were having the ceremony, and I really felt, you know, I had them up to Bedminster, most of the family members, and I got to know them. They're great people. Their sons and daughter, just as though Kamala shot them with a pistol in her hand or his hand, they were killed by Biden and Kamala. They were killed. They should have never left from that airfield. They should have left for Bagram. We should have never given up Bagram. Bagram now is controlled by China. The reason we shouldn't have given it up was not because of Afghanistan. The reason we shouldn't have given it up, 1 hour away from where China makes its nuclear weapons, and I wasn't giving it up. We were getting out quickly and effectively. I'm the one that got the numbers down to less than 5,000 soldiers. But I would have never left unless they fulfilled their obligations under an agreement. I had a wonderful agreement, but the agreement said you have to do this, this, this. They didn't do 3 of the first 5 things, so therefore they would have done it. Abdul was the leader, and he wouldn't have done it, and he would have never done that to us. And just in finishing up with that, and I appreciate the question, actually, but in finishing up with that, for 18 months, spoke to Abdul over the phone. For 18 months, not one American soldier was shot or killed. Not one American soldier was even shot at. Abdul understood. Don't do it. I said, don't do it, Abdul. Don't do it. And for 18 months, not one soldier was even shot at. And that's the way it's supposed to be, right? And then they had that horrible situation with the 13 dead, leaving billions of dollars of equipment behind, and leaving a lot of Americans behind, a lot of Americans. And you know what else? Leaving a lot of soldiers badly wounded. Nobody ever talks about them, but I do.
All right, Mr. President, let's talk about California. You are claiming that we need to do major changes in this state. If you're president, what's the biggest policy difference for the people of California? And what would the nature of your relationship be with the leaders of California who you're calling scum? How do you get that?
Well, I would have a great relationship with them. And what you have to do is start all over again. You cannot have these policies of high taxation. You can't have these policies of politics where you go after your politicians. You have to have an honest voting system because, you know, you don't have an honest voting system. They send out millions and millions of ballots. They go all over the place. Some people get 2, 3, 4, 5. You have a very dishonest system over here. If I ran with an honest vote counter in California, I would win California. But the votes are not counted honestly. It's a very dishonest system that you have in California. And I'd make it business friendly. Right now, it's business unfriendly. Look, Elon Musk is a friend of mine. He endorsed me very powerfully. He endorses me every time he speaks. He really wants to see us win because he knows we can do a great job and turn it around. He left California. I said to him, Elon, did anybody ever call you? It's a big company. He moved to Texas. A lot of people moving to Texas. Great state. Excellent governor, an excellent lieutenant governor. Great people. They love entrepreneurs. They love the people that live there. They want to keep their taxes low. Taxes are way too high here. But I said to Elon, so you have a big company and you're moving it to Texas from California. Did anybody call you, like the governor, to try and get you to stay? No. Did anybody see you, write a letter, do anything to try and keep you to stay? You have thousands of jobs. He said, nobody ever called. There'd be so many things you could do. This would be the easiest place to turn around if they knew what to do. Look at it. I mean, look at the weather. We're standing out here on the Pacific Ocean in the most beautiful weather. A lot of states don't have weather like this. They don't have Pacific Oceans. So it's many things you could do, but you start with lowering taxes and making it friendly. But think of it, Elon Musk, a great guy, brilliant guy, big company, lots of jobs, leaving. Nobody even calls him to try and get him to stay. I would have been on him. I would have said, let's have lunch, let's have dinner, and then let's have breakfast the following morning, right? I would have tried to talk him out of it. Yeah, go ahead, please.
What value do you feel that Laura Loomer brings to you? And has nobody told you about the conspiracy theories that she is promoting?
No, I don't know that much about it. No, I don't. I know she's a big fan of the campaign, but I really don't know. I would say that, well, she brings a spirit to us that a lot of people have. We have very spirited people. And in all fairness to her, she hates seeing what's happened to the country, I guess. I mean, she hates seeing what's happened to the country. So do I. It's very sad. It's very sad when I have to stand out here on my property and say how bad California is. Did you have another one?
Mr. President, getting back to some questions that matter to the people of California. There are a lot of folks here who feel like they are forgotten men and women. The state government doesn't seem to care, but you are coordinating with the local mayor. What can you do to help this community either now or when you get elected?
Well, we're going to help them, and I told John, the local mayor, but I told John we're going to help him with his slide problem. You know, there are ways of fixing that. We discussed it. He knows better than anybody. And he needs help from the federal government. He needs help from the state government. And it's a very wealthy area, but you also have people living here that are elderly and have fixed incomes and have houses that are going to be, you know, shoved into the Pacific Ocean if something's not done. And he wants it taken care of. He's a great mayor. He wants it taken care of. He wants nothing for himself. He just wants to help these people. And John, I think you said you have about 600 houses on the site that's sliding. And he'd like to be able to save those houses for people, that some of which will never be able to have a house again. You know, it's pretty sad.
Media shares are down about 75% from their peak in March. Your lockdown provision ends soon. Will you sell your shares?
No, I'm not selling. No, I love it. I mean, I use it as a method of getting out my word. You know, when it opened, it went way high, but then the SEC gave us nothing but problems. We had to go through a long process with the SEC. But people think that I'm leaving. That's why they're down, because if I leave, you know, it's different if I leave. But I'm not leaving. I love it. I think it's great. Mechanically, it works the best. And again, I'm friendly with Elon, and Elon would love me to come over to X, but I just, you know, I have close to 100 million people on X. I had 230 million people on X, and then they shut me down, and I said, I'm not going to let that happen again. You know that. I had hundreds of millions of people on X and Facebook and Instagram, I think more than anybody. Zuckerberg told me at the White House, he said, congratulations, you're #1 on Facebook. This is a number of years ago. And then all of a sudden I went from being #1 to having no voice. And after about 2 or 3 weeks, because I have a lot to say, I put out old-fashioned press statements, like a press statement. And they got really successful, and they did very well. And then we built this platform. And the reason I built it is because I don't want to have my voice shut down. But a lot of people think that I'll sell my shares. You know, they're worth billions of dollars, but I don't want to sell my shares. I'm not going to sell my shares. I don't need money. And it is for me, it's a great voice. It's a great voice. And it's a voice, it works so well. And we just won, as you know, we got final approval from the SEC. It took us a long time. And that really turned it off. You know, when I originally opened that stock, it went from about 2 to about 182. Did you know that? It was the biggest increase in the history of the stock market. I believe, you know, I have to say I believe, because you're going to find one company, maybe more, who knows. But I believe it was the single biggest movement. And I think I was worth $61 billion from that one stock. And then we had nothing but problems with the SEC. And it gets whittled down, down, down. But I didn't do it for the money. I did it because I really wanted to have a strong voice, and it's a great voice for me. And as long as my voice is on there, it's going to always be good. But a lot of people think the reason it's down is that a lot of people think I'm going to sell. And if I sell, it wouldn't be the same. I could understand that. But I have absolutely no intention of selling. Okay?
Talking about this community of Palos Verdes. You talked about California. We have fires raging to the east. Just
I agree. I agree.
What will you do to help people in this state whose homes are being damaged again and again, or are falling, off of these cliffs right behind us here, or burned down, or for the people across the country whose homes are jeopardized by natural disaster?
This is my favorite question of the day. You're asking me what would I do let's talk California first. Is that okay? Do you mind? So I was riding with Devin Nunes and some congressmen 4 years ago. I was riding up north in California, and I looked at these fields that were massive. I was telling John, right? It's my favorite question. I love that somebody would ask me this question, and I never told you to do it, right? Who are you with? Spectrum. Good. Spectrum. It's good. New, hot, right? It's hot. It's doing well, but that's because you ask good questions. So what happened, I'm saying why I look at this field, and it's massive, and in the middle of the field is a little spot of the most green, plush land you've ever seen. I said, and then I'd see another one, these little plots, like 1 and 2 acres, and you'd have 1,000 acres that's barren and dead and dark. And I said, what's the problem here? What is that green acreage? You know, the soil is unbelievably fertile, but they have no water. I said, so do you have a drought? No, we don't have a drought. We have the water is cut off upstate, up in the north. You know that? And the water, in order to protect a certain little tiny fish called a smelt, they send millions and millions of gallons of water out to the Pacific Ocean, way up north. Never even gets close to here. And you know, in Los Angeles and Beverly Hills, all these rich areas, they want to give you like 38 gallons of water to use. You buy a house for a lot of money, and then you're allowed to use 38 gallons of water. But you have no water down here. And the reason you have no water, you have the canals. The reason you have no water is because Gavin Newsom didn't want to do it. I had it all done. I had the Department of Commerce at the time, believe it or not, they're the ones that rule on this particular issue. So you have millions of gallons of water pouring down from the north with the snow caps in Canada and all pouring down. And they have essentially a very large faucet. And you turn the faucet, and it takes 1 day to turn it. It's massive. It's as big as the wall of that building right there behind you. And you turn that, and all of that water goes aimlessly into the Pacific. And if they turned it back, all of that water would come right down here and right into Los Angeles. They wouldn't have to have people not use more than 30 gallons and 32 gallons. They want to do that, they're trying to do that. And you have so much water, and all those fields that are right now barren, the farmers would have all the water they needed. And you could revert water up into the hills where you have all the dead forests, where the forests are so brittle, because no place is like California. I go to Austria. The head of Austria tells me, we have trees that are much more flammable than what you have in California. We never have forest fires because they maintain their forests. And you have all that water that could be used as water, what they call water flow, where where the land would be damp. And you'd stop many of these horrible fires that are costing billions and billions of dollars by the federal government, et cetera. So one thing I'm going to do for California, vote for me, California. I'm going to give you safety. I'm going to give you a great border. And I'm going to give you more water than almost anybody has. And the farmers up north are going to be able to use 100% of their land, not 1% of their land. And the water is going to come all the way down to Los Angeles. And you're going to have more water than you ever saw. And the smelt is not making it anyway. In fact, they make and grow
Former President Donald Trump holding a press conference today there in Rancho Palos Verdes, overlooking one of his golf courses there in California. About an hour and a half, I think he's been talking now on all types of issues. I want to bring in senior reporter Catherine Faulders. I'm going to let you decide where you want to fact check so we can move on, Catherine.
Well, thanks. No, I think the big thing, Kira, here is he's been talking a lot about those FBI statistics that were cited in the debate. He says those aren't true; those are fake statistics. The crime statistics, if you will, that is just not accurate. He's been bringing that up a lot as it relates to immigration, if you will. We've been talking a lot about that. He wants to continue his discussion about immigration. He was asked by Terry Moran, our own Terry Moran, I believe, about Springfield, Ohio, and obviously the claims that are being made there about immigrants and the eating of pets. And he essentially pivoted there and didn't really address that, didn't address the fact that the schools have been shut down, and then went on again to talk about immigration, citing numbers that you hear him cite at a lot of different events. He was asked about, Kira, what we've been talking a lot about today, Laura Loomer, the far-right conspiracy theorist who has pushed conspiracies about 9/11, about who said racist things about Kamala Harris, conspiracy theories relating to Harris. He was asked specifically about that. He said, and I'm just going to read what I wrote down that he said. He said, Laura's been a supporter of mine. She speaks very positively of the campaign. He kept saying he doesn't control her, and then going back to the fact that she's a supporter. Another reporter pressed him on that, specifically on the comments she has made about 9/11 and about Harris. And he said, oh, well, I don't know about those. I'll have to see those. I'll put out a statement later today. But as you can see, he's still there taking questions, Kira.
All right. Appreciate it, Catherine. Thanks so much. And something Catherine did mention and that we've been talking a lot about, and that's Trump's campaign rhetoric targeting Haitian migrants in Springfield, Ohio. He continues to say things. It's remaining in the headlines, and we see it even more important to add more context to the conversation, because Trump and vice presidential nominee J.D. Vance have both made unsubstantiated claims that Haitian immigrants are eating people's pets. The city's mayor says he now believes that rhetoric has contributed to an impact on the Haitian community, with bomb threats leading to school closures there in Springfield now. Both the mayor and local police have said that these claims are false, but now the claims just continued to be made today, even amid all these threats. Trump's running mate, J.D. Vance, who represents Ohio in the Senate, posted about what he said was a rise in diseases, crime, and rent in Springfield because of immigrants. President Biden weighing in just a little while ago as well from the White House. Here's what he said.
So many Americans like Karine, as he pointed out, a proud Haitian American, community that's under attack in our country right now. Simply wrong. There's no place in America. This has to stop what he's doing. It has to stop.
Join me now, Florida Congresswoman Sheila Scherfulus-McCormick. Congressman, I'm so glad that you stayed with us. I know the former president was talking for a while, but we just really felt it was so important that you stay with us and address just a headline that's been hurting a lot of people, creating a lot of controversy, and now this town of Springfield, Ohio, is feeling even more of an impact with bomb threats and school closures. So let me just start out with you were listening as well to the former president reiterating those claims. Our Terry Moran pressing him on it. He didn't get into it any further, just saying the real threat is happening at the border. So I guess my first question to you is, are you worried that this rhetoric will lead to violence?
Absolutely. This rhetoric is not only will lead, it is leading to violence, especially with this narrative that's going on, this fictitious story of somehow Haitian people are coming into the country illegally and capturing animals and eating it and doing all kinds of crazy practices. But I think what's the most harmful is how he keeps trying to stoke fear and saying everybody's scared, you should be scared because they're coming for your animals. We already know that this is totally false, but what makes it worse is that he's a divisive person who's really trying to lean into a dark time in our country and trying to make us feel like we can't trust our neighbors. We can't trust the migrants who are coming in, that they somehow are coming here to hurt us. But the truth is that Haitian people are very hard-working people. The people who we have in Ohio are actually people who came from Haiti through a legal pathway, and they actually have working papers. And they came from Haiti not just to flee the country because of the political instability, but they came to the United States, in fact, to enter into a mutually beneficial relationship in which they can come here, work to help the country, working in different fields and industries such as factories, healthcare, and also to get an education so they can help build this great country and give back to the country that allowed them to come in while they were fleeing persecution. And that's what Haitian people do when they come to the United States. For too long, we had racists and we had bigots come into this country and talk to people and say that Haitian people are here to hurt the country. But the truth is, as a Haitian American and the only Haitian American in Congress, I can tell you that's far from the truth. We've never eaten cats. I've never gone to a Haitian restaurant and saw cats on the menu or any kinds of animal. That is completely false. We have to put an end to this narrative, these scare tactics, and talk about who we really are as Haitian Americans and what we come to this country to do. And that is to help serve and help protect this country and build up this country.
So well put, Congresswoman. Thank you. And I wanted to point out that you did grow up a child of Haitian migrants, or immigrants rather, and this rhetoric and these stereotypes. Why do you think these claims are getting so much traction, and where do you think it comes from? The essence of these claims. Where do you think it's being pulled from?
Well, these are old historical stereotypes that they had that were really built at a time to dehumanize Haitian people when Haitian people actually were coming into the United States. We saw a time where they said Haitian people eat dogs, they eat cats. They were trying to fearmonger people against Haitian people entering. So these are some of the same racist epitomes that they had before, where they try to dehumanize. But we've seen this before. Even before, when they talked about black people in the past, they had dehumanizing tactics. When they talked about Jewish people, dehumanizing tactics. So we can no longer see Haitian people or migrants for who they really are. They actually are like us. If something was to happen in the United States and we need to live a better life, we would hope that another country would allow us to come in for that medium, for that time. And so we need to start looking at our brothers and sisters who are coming into this country. And I have to say this, these are legal people. They have stayed at home, they applied, they came here through legal mechanisms, they actually have an education, they're coming into the United States. Some of them are actually doctors who are waiting for them to pass their boards to practice here, and they're actually working at a factory as they're waiting. Some of them are actually coming and they have other professions. And we just need to be realistic about who we're talking about. But he keeps on talking about these aliens who are coming, so we won't see them as human beings. Today, I think he went even farther, and he said that they're releasing them out of jail. Venezuela is releasing them out of jail. This is 100% false. The Venezuelans who are coming into the country are coming with papers. They actually have a legal pathway. We have so many of them in Florida, and it's offensive, but not is it only offensive, it's disturbing and disgusting. Because what he did today now is that he made it very, very unsafe for Venezuelans as well as Haitians and other people who are in this country. And when you walk through this country and you meet people who've never met a Haitian American or a Venezuelan, they actually believe what he's saying. And that's what's dangerous. When you have people who are intentionally lying, who are intentionally misleading people to believe this so they can divide the country. But what I'm happy is that I know this country we live in, and we're no longer the people we used to be. We're working towards a better nation. We are the best country in this whole wide world. And as Americans who uphold integrity and actually equality, I know that this is not going to separate our country. So as much as he's trying to divide our country, as much as he's trying to go down to the bottomless pit of hatred and trying to get us to fight and say, you know what, we're going to believe Trump, I know we're going to rise to this moment and actually do the right thing. And that's voting for the actual right candidate who's unifying us and giving us hope. And if we're going to deal with the border situation, we have to deal with the root causes. The disturbances in these countries, that's what we have to deal with. How do we make these countries more stable? And the Biden administration has done that. I've been fighting since I've gotten into Congress these last 3 years to ensure that we're addressing the root causes, stabilizing these countries. Because the truth is, no one wants to leave their home to come to the United States. They want to live in their homes. They want to grow their children. When they come into this country, they come here without a photo album, with no history, with not even the language. And they're forced to learn the language within days. They're forced to learn how to survive here in the culture and to be the best they can be. And believe you me, every immigrant who is in the United States know that they have to prove themselves worthy and as a contributor to the United States. And that's what we seek to do. No one's here to steal, and we do not steal. No one's here to commit crimes, and we do not commit crimes. So this rhetoric needs to stop immediately, because we as a nation are better than this.
Congresswoman, that's exactly where I wanted to go next, because I know that you spoke today with the acting prime minister of Haiti. So what did you talk about with regard to Haiti's government working to make their country safer? It's been, taken over by corruption and violent gangs. So Haitians that love their country feel like they have to leave. And so they come here in large numbers seeking a better life. And then that leads to a large amount of Haitians in a community, and everybody's trying to get housing and jobs and health care. And it creates this cultural and economic tension, right? That's a whole nother issue that we could talk about. And I think that's where a lot of this dangerous rhetoric comes from, right? And why we see this a part of the political speeches. But, going back to the essence of the problem, which you just pointed out, what is the acting prime minister doing right now, and how are you involved in that discussion to make that country a better place so the people that love Haiti want to stay in the country that they love?
Well, he's really focusing on security and how he could make Port-au-Prince safer for everyone. The gangs now are trying to spread and trying to enlarge, but because we have a mission in, they're really dealing with that gang issue and the safety of the Haitian people. Simultaneously, he's looking at ways that Haitian Americans who are interested in making Haiti safer and a good place to invest and kind of help the country to evolve. We all know that a country needs to have stability, but it also has to have economic investments. And the diaspora has been looking for ways to invest in Haiti, how to help Haiti. There are trillions of dollars that come from Haitian Americans who are in the United States into Haiti trying to help Haiti thrive. So he's looking at those mechanisms also, but then we're also looking at the political stability. With the transition government and him as the prime minister, we are planning to have an election in Haiti, and he's looking on putting together that force, that task force, to make sure they're free and clear and actually stable and credible elections in Haiti. So there's 3 pieces that he's working on, and we're working here also in the United States to make sure that he has what he needs to rebuild the country. But it's not just Haiti that we're looking at also. We're looking at other countries that we see a large influx of migrants who are coming in. How do we stabilize those countries? How do we make them feel comfortable staying at home? And that's really the hard work. The easy work is to get up and start spewing rhetoric that isn't true, to lie, and comes from a place of the old time, right? It comes from a place where you had these old time racists who were afraid of everyone. Anybody who wasn't like them, who wasn't in that clique, they were afraid of them. But now, looking at where we are in 2024, now I feel like most people have met Haitian people, they have met migrants. J.D. Vance is even married into a migrant family, a family of people who came from India to have a new life. So I think his comments are even more disgusting, because how do you go home to your family and look at your mother-in-law, look at your wife and your children, understanding their plight coming into the United States? There were negative things that were said about Indians at one time also, and then come out and say these words that you know are false. This is the problem that we have. We have a group of people who are trying to really lean in to the old United States and not move forward to a place of freedom for all, living up to the standard that we have set. The international community actually looks towards us for stability, for actually a standard where you have honesty, integrity, where we can live together, work together, and turn from our harmful past to a new trajectory where we're all even. So the comments that he's making about the international community loving him or liking him, completely false. If anything, they're looking at him and wondering, how can Americans even consider having such a divisive person there? And if you even look at the people or the leaders, the international leaders who he always referenced, they're always going to be authoritarian, they're always going to be dictators. There's an obsession he has with people who like to deny everybody's freedoms and rights and have them playing into him, playing into his ego. When he's talking and he says that he wants to be a dictator for a day, I don't think that we actually understand what that means and really understand his mindset. When he's talking about his crowd size, when he's talking about himself continuously, when he's talking about the FBI and himself and what they're doing to him, this is what dictators like to do. They take a country and they build it all around them, meeting their egos, meeting their needs, whatever it is to protect them in those spaces, even though it harms the rest of the world. And that's why this moment is crucial and it's very serious. He's telling us who he is. He's showing us who he is. He's not afraid to lie to prove a point. He's not afraid to lie to get people to be scared so they can vote for him. So we must take this moment very serious. And I've seen dictators, I've seen authoritarian leaders, and he is definitely one. This is not democracy that he's talking about. This is about Donald Trump, and this is about making the United States a United States for Donald Trump and not for all men and women.
Florida Congresswoman Sheila Shurflis McCormick, sure appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Coming up, a group of Democratic attorneys general calling on the Department of Justice to investigate Texas leaders for potential violations of federal law and civil rights.
Whenever news breaks,
we are here in Israel.